What's up, Eugene? You're listening to the Eugene Morning Hustle Podcast, brought to you by the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. We're your hosts, Brandon Miller and Ivan Torres, and like us, we know you'd like to know what's going on in your city, socially, economically, civically, and culturally. From events to guest interviews and professional and personal development tips, each week we bring you stories of local business owners, advocates, leaders, and everyday Eugenians sharing how they've strengthened their roots to reach a little deeper in our community and how you can too.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Like the introduction suggested, I'm Ivan Torres, and this is...
I'm Brandon Miller.
And we'd like to welcome everybody to episode 0 of the Eugene Morning Hustle Podcast, brought to you by the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce.
That's right. Our goal with this podcast episode is to share what this podcast is all about and why this should be part of your podcast listening rotation. And Ivan here is going to share with us a little bit about why we chose to partner with the Chamber of Commerce. So, Ivan, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember being at the Young Professionals Summit? We were talking about just how many professionals we've seen at the place, and we were like, where are all these people on the daily, you know?
Exactly.
I think that the idea for the podcast was really born there without really knowing that was the direction we were going to go, right? So we learned through these summits, you know, that there's all of these things that are happening throughout the city that nobody knows about, or not that nobody knows about, but if you're not aware of it, you don't know about it.
One of the things that I felt walking away was like, how can more people know about this? Mm-hmm. How can more people get involved? And the podcast seems like a great outlet for, you know, if you're on the go and you want to listen and you want to be like, really? I can be a change maker. Yeah. I can help give a voice to that stop sign that should be at that intersection because there's accidents all the time. Mm-hmm. I can be an advocate saying, hey, we need a stop sign, city. We need a stop sign here because we need to save lives. Mm-hmm. Like, we could be the change makers. And it's like, I don't want to just have this one outlet, right. From a summit, from a, 30 or 40 minute talk. Session. That's the only time that we get to talk about it and be exposed. No, there should be an outlet. And this podcast really is going to be the catalyst for bringing on guests that can, bring up those subjects, expose us, expose our listeners and say, do you want to be part of the solution? Here's how you do it.
So the reason we ended up partnering with the Chamber was because we started to see a connection between local issues and telling the stories of local change makers. And oddly enough, that was what the Chamber of Commerce was already doing. And the Chamber was already connected to those voices in the community, so we wanted to tell their stories. And lastly, we'd like to show our support for local businesses by introducing new businesses to our audience, businesses that have been around for decades in the city of Eugene, because ultimately, that's the bloodline of Eugene. That's the economy. And lately, we've been just seeing too many businesses close down. And I mean, what happens to those employees, right? What happens to those people if they can't find something in the city of Eugene? They end up having to get up and go somewhere else. And we don't want that. We want people to be able to come to the city and stay and dig their roots here. Really, that would be the ultimate goal.
Speaking of local businesses, those are the types of people we're going to be having on the podcast as well. We're going to bring on business owners. We're going to bring on CEOs. We would love to bring on some of the employees too, At the same time, we want to bring on, political leaders within our community who are driving change. We want to bring even just everyday Eugenians, right, that are making an impact, whether they're volunteering somewhere, and we'd love to hear their story of how they are creating change in our community, right? They may not get the praise every day, but we want to share that story and share how we all can get involved, from their stories. I think one of the misconceptions about, this person's on a pedestal, right? Well, they're not on a pedestal, right? Because we can all do it. We can all go. If another human being can do it, so can you, right? That's kind of my philosophy, anyways. It's that, so if we bring a guest on and we want to share their story of how they got started, with their physician practice, right? They're a single person. How did they build a whole physician practice, right? It seems a little unattainable to some people, but the truth of the matter is they're an everyday Eugenian, just like us.
Yeah.
we can all do it. We can all do something amazing like that. And the guests that we bring on, we want to share those stories. We also want to share some of the issues that are being tackled, right? I know we talked earlier in this podcast about homelessness and things, and why not bring on some of the people that are driving the change in that sector, right? So those are some of the guests we're going to be having on the show. Ivan, could you share with our listeners what else we have coming up?
We are going to be offering personal and professional development tips, empowering stories, and lessons learned that our viewers can apply to their lives.
This is something Eugene has needed for a long time. I mean, I've been here since 2017, and even like those first couple of years that I lived here, I didn't really know how to plug myself into the community, right? I didn't really even know how to meet people. You know, it's funny that, you know, when you're not going out to the bars at night, or you've just finished college, or you're in college, you know, it's hard to meet people outside of there. And it's all about who you're connected to, right?
Totally.
And, you know, now that it's been a few years and I've been able to get connected with the Chamber of Commerce, the Eugene Young Professionals, that's how we met. I feel like my roots are starting to really dig deep in the community, and I really hope this podcast is that catalyst for everyone else as well. Do you have a story that's similar to that, or is it totally different?
No,
Similar?
absolutely, yeah. So this is now my third year, and it wasn't until this year came around that I actually found a group to be a part of, to start being just involved with my community. And it just took a little while, right? But if it wasn't for Summit, for the Eugene Young Professionals Summit, that was what really opened up a lot of doors for me. As far as what's out there, the groups that are meeting and everything. But man, I just remember being there and them talking about the events and how many events were actually happening. And I was like, how do you even keep track of these, or how do you even find these things?
It's funny you say that about all the events, because that is a huge part of what we want to bring to the podcast. You know, yes, it's hard to find out about all the events that are happening unless you're already in the know. You know, there's no real central location for all this information. So we want to be that location, right? When you pop on this podcast, you can listen and find out about what's happening at Town Hall, what's happening, at, some of the local restaurants and music venues and the art scene. I mean, the ballet, right? I mean, Ballet Fantastique. How many people know about that?
Absolutely.
I don't know, but, Eugene has such a robust art scene, along with all of the ways that you could get involved to volunteer. There are ways that you can propel your career, right? Continued education opportunities, they're here. They're available, not just at Lane Community College, but other avenues throughout our city. And we want to share that so people feel like they have everything they need in our city.
Absolutely.
Right?
Brandon, this is going to be a ton of fun. When can our viewers expect more episodes?
Oh, we really had high hopes of releasing an episode every week for listeners, but seeing as we're just kind of starting out and we're trying to, get our bearings here, we'll be releasing 2 a month. So every 2 weeks, you'll get a brand new episode of the Eugene Morning Hustle podcast. And hopefully, as things progress, we'll release one every week. So folks have a go-to source to feel motivated, inspired, empowered, and in the know about Eugene.
Alrighty, folks, that wraps us up for episode 0 of the Eugene Morning Hustle podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe to us wherever it is that you find your podcasts, and you can find the show notes in the details below. And a quick message from Brandon.
This episode of the Eugene Morning Hustle podcast was brought to you by the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce and sponsored by Ivan Torres of Business Block Studios and Brandon Miller Voiceover. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel where you get your podcasts, and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay in the know. If you have any questions, topics, or guests you'd like us to dive into, send us a voice message on the Eugene Chamber Instagram page, and we'll feature you and your question on a future episode. Or shoot us an email at podcast@eugenechamber.com. Till next time, Eugene.